Welcome to The Footy. This week, we're lucky enough to be joined by the Brown family, more specifically, Hester and Ben Brown. Many would know Big Ben Brown as the 4-time leading goal kicker for North Melbourne, or more importantly, as a 2021 premiership medallist for the Demons. 10 disposals, 3 goals. My favourite of the goals being third quarter from James Harms. You let out away from him. So Jack Viney gets the break. Harms gets it out of that little pack. He kicks across the goal, and you're like, I know where I'm going, and then it turns. So that's my favourite. We'll get back to that. But Ben is also a Tasmanian. He's an assistant coach at Melbourne AFLW. He's a dad and a husband to our other very special guest today, Hester Brown. Many may know Hester as a podcast host. She's the host of The Significant Others, a podcast aimed at showcasing well-known Australian partners and their stories. And Hester is also a very successful marriage celebrant and an advocate for multiple causes. And together, Hester and Ben are a force for good. In a footy world where the same faces and voices are rebroadcast over and over, Ben and Hester have used their collective profile campaigning for issues that they support, like gender equality, seen with their work for the hashtag Choose to Challenge campaign. Ben and Hester, thanks for joining us today.
What a great intro.
That's very kind.
That's the best,
Thank you.
It's the best intro we've ever had, I reckon.
We'll be back.
Now let's drop the standard. After that, I was thinking about, have you got a couple name like Brangelina? Because there's the two obvious ones. There's Bester, and then I thought Hen.
Yeah.
And then there's Heston.
Yep.
If you wanted to do food.
That feels like someone else's name, doesn't it? I think our wedding hashtag was Bester Wedding. So
yeah, great.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Bester, I love that. Thank you for joining us. You're our first couple on the podcast, so we really appreciate that. How did you both meet?
Do you want to tell us well or me?
Yeah, all right. I sort of feel like, in a way, we were pretty lucky to meet. So we met at a mutual friend's birthday pub crawl around the corner from where we're talking now.
Really?
So Sydney Road, Brunswick.
Well, you're very trendy then. Or was it pre-trendy Brunswick?
I mean, I'd like to think so, but probably not. No, we're probably just followers, aren't we? So we had a friend's birthday pub crawl that we were both at, and I think we were kind of both at it when maybe we shouldn't have been.
You were at it?
Wait, yeah.
What do you mean by at it?
Yeah.
Do you mean...
Don't do that.
Oh, no, right. No, I thought that's what you were talking about, but I just wanted to clarify.
In attendance.
Yes.
No.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. All right. No, we were both in attendance when maybe we shouldn't have been. I came straight from a leadership program graduation at uni. Mm-hmm. And Ben was living in Werribee at the time. And we had sort of actually both just split up from different partners. So...
And both of those partners were there
at
on
the
the
event.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think it would have been really easy to not go and sort of decide to sit that one out. But we both went, and our friend Francis, I guess, set us up, really. Would you say?
Who was Hester's ex-partner?
Yeah.
Really?
We're best friends now.
But yeah,
You were set up by...
we're all really good mates. Francis
Yeah.
is a ripper. He said to me at the start of the night, because I started off at his place, and he said, I've this girl I want to introduce you to, she's kind of Tasmanian. Which Hester has never lived in Tasmania. Family is Tasmanian, but so just said this in passing. I was like, all right, whatever. And I think he was telling you about me as well.
Yeah, he told me about you a lot, which I didn't really pay that much attention to. He just sort of said, I met this guy and he's just the best guy. He's the nicest person I've ever met. He's Tasmanian. I think you really like him. We just spoke for hours about really important stuff. He's so interesting and smart, and you've never met anyone like him before. And now when I look back, I'm like, that was quite heavy-handed, wasn't it? But he introduced us on the dance floor.
And this is a pub near here? This is a Brunswick pub?
Yeah.
Was it the Penny Black?
Penny Black.
Which is still going strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. He introduced us on the dance floor, and he said, this is Ben. he's from Tasmania and he's going to play footy one day. And what you have to understand about Francis is that he talks a lot of, you know,
BS.
he's a real joker. So I was like, that's very funny. Weird joke, but that's very much his style of joke. And we sort of got to talking straight away, I guess, and Ben just had the biggest smile. Like we were out at a bar, but Ben was just having the happiest time. He was so tall. He had like a full fro at this point.
Yeah.
And he was just this smiley guy who was like, do you want to dance? I was like, wow, I really have never met anyone like this before. And I think it didn't really take very long for us to sort of just click, and we ended up spending, you know, that evening talking and getting to know one another. But I do remember I said to Ben, we were having a chat in a beautiful Brunswick laneway. I said, oh, you know, like, what are you doing? Like, what do you do? And he was like, oh, I play footy. And it's like, okay, that's a nice hobby. And he said, yeah, I actually moved from Tassie to play footy. I live in Werribee now. I was like, oh, that's nice. Who do you play for? And he was like, Werribee. But I guess I wasn't very well versed with the VFL system, or I wasn't really expecting it, so I think I embarrassed myself a little bit.
Were you finding many women that you were talking to at that point in time were familiar with the VFL structure?
I wouldn't say I was talking to that many women.
Oh, you don't play for the Frankston Dolphins? That's a shame. Yeah, no, that's good. So where were you in your career in that point?
This was at the end of my year with Werribee.
Right.
So it was about a month before the draft.
Yeah.
When I was drafted by North Melbourne. So at that stage I thought like, oh, maybe I'm a chance here. It was my fourth time going for a draft, so I was definitely not like putting all my eggs in that basket. I do remember you telling me, you know, a few years later that you were actually watching the draft sitting on a tram.
Because you went back to Tassie because it was your birthday, wasn't it? The draft day, or a day or two before?
Pretty much, yeah.
And so I was sitting on the tram because we were sort of seeing each other at this point. And I just thought, oh, if he gets sent to like West Coast, I'll probably never see him again.
We've only known each other for a month at that point. So it really could.
Yeah.
We probably would have caught up maybe twice or three times.
Yeah, I couldn't have moved to Perth or anything.
Yeah.
So I was just sitting there watching, and you sort of had an inkling that you were going to go to, was it the Bulldogs or Essendon? And they had some picks together, and then there was this big gap where there was like Fremantle, West Coast, Gold Coast. So I was just looking over those ones, feeling the butterflies in my tummy, like, no. But I also had one thing, like, you know, he was so smiley when I met him, and I was so amazed with his optimism. Like, he said to me, oh, you know, I've tried 3 times to get drafted, and I'm hoping to get drafted now. And I thought that was pretty optimistic. Like, when you've missed 3, to think, you know what, I'm going to try again. So I really wanted it for him. I felt like obviously he'd put in a lot of work and he hadn't given up, but I just really wanted it to be somewhere in Melbourne. And then when it came up on my phone and the club name literally had Melbourne in the title, I was like, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. What's your frame of mind, and how do you remember that time, Ben? Because, yeah, what happened with 3 drafts that you tried at and had no luck, and then this period where you're meeting your future partner and then getting drafted? What's that like?
I did my ACL in my draft year when I was 17. And yeah, it'd been this weird like period of time because I never thought I was a chance at playing AFL football. I would have loved to, but I just didn't think it was. I thought it was a pipe dream. And I was playing with the Tassie under-18 team at that time, just having a good time. And I had a couple of good games, and suddenly, as you do when you're like a 17-year-old, you get onto big footy and you start you search for your name and just see what everyone's talking about you. And I noticed, it's a few people saying like I could get drafted here. I was like, wow, this is suddenly I'm like up here. You know, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'm a chance here. And then did my ACL like 3 weeks later. So within the space of about a month, I went from being like having a great time playing footy, but never a chance of making the big leagues, to suddenly like, I'm a chance here, and then right back down to earth. And I was like, okay. But the good thing about that period of time, I think for me, was that it kind of lit the fire, and I knew that I wanted to do it because I'd almost got that close. So I was playing basketball at the time. I gave up basketball. It's like, I'm going to play footy. So yeah, a couple more years in Tassie, and then decided to move to Victoria to try and have one last crack at it. And then, yeah, played that year at Werribee, and things went reasonably well, and yeah, was lucky enough to have North Melbourne draft me at that point. But yeah, it was, I feel like we've talked a lot about like me, but in meeting Hess, at that time, I think that was a really, like, I couldn't have met you at a better time. I think you could have met me at a better time, but I couldn't have met you at a better time because I feel like I was really on this precipice of figuring out who I was as a person. I think Hester was really important in sort of shaping the person that I wanted to be and sort of guiding me down a path that I knew I wanted to go on anyway, but I don't necessarily know if I would have got there or got there as quickly if I hadn't have met her, because I think the one thing that stood out for me was just how well Hester knew herself and what she wanted out of life and the values that she wanted to live, and how much she would go after protecting those values and how much she would live by them in her everyday life. And it was to the point where, like, you know, if I raised something that she didn't agree with, she would just flat out tell me. And I just hadn't had that experience of like, you know, some people would maybe call it bluntness. But, you know, if I sort of said something that didn't quite stack up, Hess would, yeah.
Let you know.
You would let me know about it. And I was like, whoa, okay. I've sort of danced around a lot of values-based issues, I suppose, myself. And like in footy circles, you do that a lot. There's a lot of blurring of lines with what's sort of kosher and what's not. But there was no blurring of lines with Hester. So, and I love that about her, and that's something that has really helped to develop me into the person that I want to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So do you have any questions, Marnie, on that?
I just love listening to that. I feel very single right now, just sitting watching you two just stare at each other lovingly with things like that. No, that's great. What are some of the values?
I think include, well, probably classic lefty values, I suppose. Like inclusion. We've done a lot of work in the inclusivity space, you know, and a lot of that stuff was things I think that like my parents instilled in me from when I was very young, personally, and yeah, like I said, I always wanted to sort of, you know, look after other people, be there for other people, and be sort of a caring person who cared about more than just myself and my immediate family and friends, but actually have, I suppose, a broader perspective on life. So yeah, I suppose it's just like trying to, we try to listen, I think, to lots of people's stories from various different walks of life and try to understand life from a whole bunch of different perspectives, and then live out those those values in our lives, trying to like understand where other people's perspectives are. I mean, we're vegan as well, so you know, from a family perspective, you know, animal cruelty was like kind of one side of it, I suppose. Like trying to look after, like if from my point of view, it's like if I don't need to consume animals or animal byproducts to have a healthy, happy life, then I won't do that. And yeah, I think that's something that we share and something that has helped me to come to that decision as well. But you can probably expand on that a little bit more. I feel like I've just blah into the microphone there a bit. So you can take over here, Hess. This is the benefit of having two of us here.
What do you want from me?
Just expand on our values a little bit more. I feel like I
feel like when I met you, you knew that there was a lot of things that you cared about, and your parents are incredible with that. Like your mum sort of every now and again, she goes, maybe I need to sell everything that I own and give it to people who have nothing. Like she would give the clothes off her back in a heartbeat, and your dad would be there supporting her all the way. Like, they are incredibly giving and caring people. But I think just growing up as a young boy and a young man, and, you know, you had a beautiful, happy, healthy, pretty sheltered childhood, and then things went quite well for you at the end there. So I think maybe what you're trying to say is that you knew you cared about all these things, but you didn't know what to do about it. Like, you didn't have direction on how to live your values, or on how to articulate how things made you feel, or understanding other people's perspectives, where to get those perspectives from. And I think probably
You helped.
trying to not say something insulting about myself, but I feel like I have always been really blunt and knew what I cared about. Like the kids in school, the boys in school used to tease me by reading out like a 1950s housewife's manifesto, like during class, and they would give each other points if they distracted me from doing my work, just because I cared about my schoolwork. Very boring, but also I was like, that's actually just a historical perspective that can provide a lens to feminism. Thank you for sharing.
It's a classic tool in bullying, I've noticed. It's reading a 1950s.
Yeah, you're not as
housewife
smart
book.
as you think you are.
Yeah.
It's actually proving my point. But yeah, like, and I guess like I just never let that stuff bother me. I was always kind of ready to face it. So the idea of, I guess, being in the spotlight and having opinions, and, you know, when Ben got drafted, I don't think it took me long to realise that for us, that has responsibilities attached to it, and so much privilege, and what an honour. You know, the really simple example is if a kid comes up and, you know, sees Ben at the supermarket, that can make a kid's day. Like, what an incredible honour. Imagine being able to give that to a child. And then when you extend that out, like, you know, we do the Good Friday appeal every year, which is a very personal one for us and Ben's family, but going in, the footballers and the other celebrities and anyone else, they go into the hospital on those days and they can light the place up just by being themselves. That's an incredible thing to be able to do. And therefore, you know, when you're in such an incredibly privileged position, surely there's a responsibility to use that privilege and, you know, just a portion of your time and money even and influence to look after other people. So I think we kind of saw that as this amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
That, you know, I was happy to support Ben through. I don't think anyone's excited to meet me, but I'm happy to be the little mastermind in the corner.
I was so excited to meet you.
Marnie is your biggest fan, as I mentioned.
I'm Marnie's biggest fan.
I just want to talk to what you're talking. I think there's something about being in your early 20s, and I think when you're growing up, you feel certain ways about certain things, and you might look at you might have some thoughts, and you haven't fully fleshed them through. And then when you get to either uni or whatever you're doing in your early 20s, it really sets you on a course. And and there's people who you know in your 20s, and then you come back and meet them when you're 30, and you go, well, we went in completely different directions. So it's really nice that you both met each other at a really important time. I'm curious to know from you, Hester, because you were at uni, or you were close to finishing uni when you met Ben, and as dating someone whose profile was quite big, quite quickly, I would say, how you adjusted your life and your goals personally to that. You've talked a little bit about it there with showcasing causes that you care about, but I'm curious to know how that was for you.
It's a really interesting time for me, actually, because I think growing up, I was really obsessed with success in an external and conventional way. Like, I thought I had to achieve in everything I did, be perfect, get the right marks, go to the right school. So I studied law after school. You know, really passionate. I wanted to do human rights law, really passionate about making a difference. And I realised pretty quickly, actually, that even though I care about those things so much, it wasn't like an ideal world for me. Someone who's very, like, anxious and, like, really hard on themselves. It was very competitive, really interesting and a great experience, and I made lots of friends. But in terms of the profession and the environment, it was very competitive and adversarial, and kind of argumentative, and not really what I wanted, I guess, not really how I saw myself living out the rest of my life. So I think when I met Ben, I was trying actually to shift my focus a little bit and look after myself better and think about what I really wanted and not what I just thought people expected of me or what I thought I should do. And Ben was so incredible at bringing me back down to earth and had an incredible impact on me, helping me to like relax and be comfortable with myself and to enjoy life, I guess, instead of just trying to win it or run it or be in charge of it. And it changed my life in a lot of ways too. We moved in together pretty quickly. We'd only been together for a year and a half or something when we moved in together. I mean, a little bit, truly. My mum moved into an apartment. I was living with my mum and my sister. So it was either I was going to move into a tiny apartment with my mum in St Kilda, and it would be really hard for us to see each other because Ben was living in Werribee, or we found a place together. So it was actually like a pretty quick move, but it had a lot of impacts for me too. Like my family didn't have a lot of money. My mum's an artist and a disability support worker, disability art teacher. So Centrelink put me through uni, and as soon as I moved in with Ben, all of my Centrelink payments got cut. Yeah. It made us a couple, and so even his first year wage was, or second year, whatever it was too much for the threshold. And I just remember bawling my eyes out on the phone because I was like, how am I going to buy my books?
Yeah.
And it forced us really early actually into this relationship where Ben was the breadwinner and I had to accept money from him or I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
So it changed things pretty quickly, I think. And I think maybe in a way that was a good lesson for me because when it comes to footy, there's not a lot of flexibility at all in their schedules. And everything else has to work around footy. There's nothing that footy really bends for. So it's probably a good lesson for me in how the next 10 years of my life would go, I guess. It sounds kind of, I don't know, maybe it sounds kind of sad or dramatic, but it's just kind of true that if you sort of have to understand, and we tried the absolute best we can to make sure everything is equal and even and fair in our relationship, but footy doesn't really get fair.
Yeah.
Including your pregnancies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Ben had knee surgery when I was 40 weeks pregnant with our second child. So when I was in the hospital after giving birth, the nurses were bringing him ice. It was supposed to be for my perineum, but it was on his knee.
Did they let you into the Royal Women's, Ben? Were you doing your knee?
He basically was.
It was. I remember having the chat with the footy club because I'd hurt my knee sort of that week. And yeah, Hess was due. So we were kind of going like, look, she wasn't getting induced or anything. So it was like, it could come at any time over the next 2 weeks.
Is 40 more than 9 months?
40 is bang on.
Right. Okay.
That's your due date.
I think you were like 39 and a half when we were having the discussion. We went into the surgeon. So like, look, we need to get this done now, or you lose. You could wait for Hester to give birth. That might be another 2 weeks down the track. So then you've lost 2 weeks of your rehab, and then we were sort of about to start the season. So then you're 2 weeks behind schedule. So you're potentially missing round one or whatever it is. So yeah, we were having the discussions with the surgeon, like if Hester goes into labour while I'm like getting my knee like washed ready to go in, like can I leave and come back later? And the surgeon's like, yeah, you can do that. So like we were making all these plans because it could have happened at any time. I could have been literally under anaesthetic, and then the surgeon gets a call that Hester's going to give birth. But it was like, yeah, it wasn't like I could, from a football perspective, this is what Hester's talking about. It's not flexible. Like if
and they kind of said too, you could do it a week later, but then you wouldn't be able to support me a week after I gave birth, and we had 2 children now.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of lose-lose.
Yeah.
So we just decided to go ahead and have the surgery, and I think it was about 3 days later, or 2 days later.
So he's trying to carry me into the hospital. Can't walk.
Do you feel knee pain when you're seeing your child born?
I probably should.
Yeah. Wow. Incredible stories. When Marnie mentioned that we could chat, I didn't expect them to be so thoughtful, so I'm really, really, really enjoying this.
Sorry, we're not very funny, are we? We're very serious.
I love it.
It really, really, it's
You said very light-hearted at the start.
Yeah. It's very different to the Will Anderson chat.
I don't think we've ever been called funny before, have we, babe?
Well, I do want to pivot a little bit. I want to know what it's like to be a partner on game day, and what the experience is like for you on those days, and what kind of foods are on show, and what we're eating, and what's free and what's not, predominantly.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think all families are really different in this. And I remember, like, before we had kids, it was so easy to, take it really seriously. Make sure you've got a really good sleep and the sleep in, and you had a really good breakfast. And also game day really depends on the time of day, like what's the best thing to do. Sometimes you won't even have lunch because it'll be at lunchtime, and then they eat afterwards and all that kind of thing. Or you end up having dinner at 10 o'clock in the car on the way home or whatever it is. But yeah, I think like before kids, it was very easy to take seriously. And we've had 2 kids since then. And our kids don't sleep in. So I guess that's one thing for us. We always try and give Ben a sleep in and hopefully not up over the night before a game. We try not to make it, that I'm doing too much of anything, but I always just have this fear that he'll be too tired and get knocked out because his reflexes aren't the same and stuff like that. So we do try and make sure he's had some sleep collectively as a family. But sometimes the girls don't really want to partake in that particular rule. Sometimes they want to party in the night, but it's been not too bad.
As is their right.
I think.
It's interesting listening to that answer, because when I heard that question, Broden, I assumed what you were talking about was, Hester's experience of game day. And this comes back to what we were talking about before. Hester's experience of game day is intrinsically tied to how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
That was where her mind went straight away, was like, you said, what food are you eating? I assumed that would be like in the corporate boxes, which food is, and that's what you were talking about, right? Hester went straight.
And I'm just like worried about how you're feeling and how you're doing.
Hester went straight to like what my breakfast was in the morning before the game. So that gives you, like, inadvertently, Hester, gives you
it's a great answer.
It gives you an insight into like what it is like to be a partner, because I think the partners do worry a hell of a lot about, like, they become secondary to.
Yeah, well, it makes me think as well, it would pretty much be for any footballer with a family that everything is a family decision. So like when you move club, I'd love to know what that was like for both of you. But yeah, if Joe Bloggs from Essendon is playing today, it's a family decision, and the whole family's involved in it. So like what was it, 2019? 2020. When you moved, what was that like as a family? And does Simon Goodwin get in front of you, or both of you, or what happens?
It was COVID, so I didn't meet anyone. I didn't meet anyone until months later.
Yep.
Didn't go into the club. It was such a big change for us. At North Melbourne, we were both super involved. So we had been volunteers at the Huddle Study Support for years, once a week. So that's helping migrant and refugee kids from the community with their homework after school. It's a great program, and it was so awesome to be part of. But so I was in there every week for that. And then later on, we became part of North Melbourne's Gender Equity Working Group, and so that was once every 2 weeks or once a month as well. So even just like for my own, I suppose, volunteer purposes, I was in at the club all the time.
Yeah.
5 times a month, at least. And then, it was so close to home. Obviously, we bought a place near the club.
Yeah.
Whoops. So like we'd go down and like hang out with the other families and stuff like that too. It was easy. It was not locked off at all, you know, because it's like a public park really. So the kids would run around and we knew, like I felt like I knew almost every staff member by name and their families and that sort of thing. And then moving over, it was COVID, and we literally couldn't meet anyone. So it felt like a long time before we really got to know anyone. And Ben was just going for socially distanced walks in the park with coaches.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
I remember actually as a family when you came to Melbourne, because I remember, like, if you're at a game, I remember like just it felt like 400 ginger people coming out onto the ground together, like when, like for a milestone moment, your kids and yourself, like lots of redheaded people. I was like, finally some redheaded representation.
Represent.
That's what we're here for.
So do you make the decision together? Like you get like the coaching team get in front of you and say, this is what we feel, how you fit into the club, and then you talk about it as a family, or?
Oh yeah, everything's a joint decision. And while as we've talked about football, I don't know, people say football is a selfish profession, and I think there is a certain element of that. I like to think I'm not too selfish. But as we've talked about, the nature of footy is that sometimes it has to be.
Particularly a full forward as well.
Yeah. Again, I try not to. But all the decisions we make are as a family, particularly the big ones. And I think the key thing for us is communication.
Yeah.
When we're communicating well, things go well, and when we're not communicating so well, that's when things are harder.
And I think we're planners, especially with our values, like we were mentioning before. When things sort of took off for Ben quite out of the blue early, we sort of sat down and said, this is how we want this to go. We never want to be making decisions that are based on money or power or anything like that. We want to make sure that every decision we make in this job is something that we do as a family and values based, and on what we think is going to be best for us as a family, as a community, that sort of thing.
Great. Thoughts from you? Yeah.
How was it having to watch the premiership from home?
Yeah. It was hard, Marnie. Thank you for asking.
Thanks for the question, Marnie.
No, I was just thinking about like how invested you get within football. Like you sacrifice a lot as well. Like you've mentioned a lot about it. So like you finally get the reward, but you're sitting at home.
It was a tough one too, because Ben's family are all in Tassie. They could all go. Oh. So I sort of felt like the only person who wasn't there. And I think, I'm so sorry, this isn't going to be funny either, but
don't worry, I'll make it funny, don't worry.
I try not to talk about the hub situation too much, because I think during COVID, everybody was having a really hard time. And for a lot of people, the fact that sports people and their families were moving around the country was very difficult, especially when people had funerals or loved ones that they wanted to get to but couldn't. And I totally understand how difficult that was. That first hub that we, or most of us, went to in 2020, however, though, was not my favourite experience. And we had a lot of personal hardships while we were there as well. I was very sick, pregnant, and it was a pretty harrowing and difficult experience. And I sort of promised myself that I would never let him go without me, because as hard as that was, I never wanted us to do it without each other's support. So then finding out the next year that they were going to the finals hubs and we couldn't go was something that I struggled with a lot. My mental health was terrible. And we had a really young Esme. She started waking up 7 times a night because Dad just disappeared out of the blue. And, of course, we were all in lockdown. So it was a pretty rough time, and I kind of can't believe that Ben did such an amazing job of keeping himself together, knowing that we were at home and I was finding it so difficult. And again, we mentioned that my sister has the kids right now, and she did everything in her power to look after me and the kids at that point. So we were very lucky to have her. But it was emotionally very tricky. The finals themselves, it made me feel so much better that people would message me all the time and say, because, you know, I felt guilty. I was like, how is football an essential service? How are there people who can't do their jobs, but kicking footies around is essential? And the AFLW season got cancelled, which felt like a really rough thing in comparison. But, people would message me and say, it's making my week that there are football games on. It makes me so happy to watch the football. It gives us something to do, something to celebrate, something to plan our weeks around. Like, that just made the biggest difference. Like, the nice, beautiful things that people would send to me over that time was actually so incredibly helpful, and just to make you feel like they were doing something that helped when I was like, he's not a doctor. Can't cure anyone with a hanger. But yeah, watching the games was interesting and really exciting and bizarre. Esme woke up for the second half of the grand final. So she was there for it too, which is kind of cool in the end.
So when the game turned, Esme woke up.
That's right, she's good luck. But also, that game was a wild game. Like, it really had swings and roundabouts. And Marnie, our friend Marty Dangerfield, had messaged me that day and said, grand finals, they're a different type of game. Like, just be prepared for the fact that you might be up by heaps, you might be down by heaps at the middle, three-quarter time, any point, but it doesn't mean that the game is over. So, you know, grand finals, they swing much more than regular games, and it's going to feel like that emotionally, so don't give up too soon. And then she ended up being so right. You know, partway through that game, De Bont was just killing it. Everything was looking pretty dire. And I sort of was remembering what Marty had said to me. And when the siren went, it was this unbelievable feeling. We were so excited. We decorated the house, which I've never done before. But again, it was lockdown, and you're like, got to do something to bring those good vibes and feel like we're a part of it. And I actually had my sister, who's a graphic designer, design these posters with the girls' pictures on them, pictures of the girls, and then a beautiful friend of mine whose partner was playing for Fremantle at the time was going for the game. So we had them sent to her, and she took them to the game so that there were these posters of the girls' faces in the crowd, so that I thought if Ben saw them, he would feel like his kids were there with him. But yeah, it was...
Not during the game.
Just dashing my hopes.
Few too many people. But my parents were over there, and all my brothers, and my grandma as well. And yeah, they brought it down to the rooms afterwards, so I could see it.
But yeah, it was an amazing feeling when the siren went and they'd won, partly because, you know, I obviously have lots of friends from different clubs who are partners, and they posted things like, when the boys left, like, just bring us back a premiership and it'll be totally worth it. But of course, you know that only one team is going to do that. It's not possible for all of them to bring it back. So it was kind of amazing to think like, oh, well, of course that helps make it feel like it's worth it to be a part, but also that it was something that nobody could ever take away from Ben. Like we alluded to before, the moving clubs was really difficult, and people obviously always have a lot of things to say. And I think Ben is somebody that people like to have things to say about because he's different. So it was nice to think he's kicked 3 goals in a premiership and no one could ever take that away
100%.
from him. As a protective partner, I was like, check that out.
Great story. I love this.
Yeah.
How would you and Marty go if it was Geelong Melbourne in a grand final?
What did we have? We had Geelong Melbourne in a final
It was the
recently.
It was the prelim.
It was the week before. Yeah, we texted the whole way through.
Okay, great.
Beautiful.
Like sledging or?
No.
And you're doing the Good Friday appeal this year, Ben?
Yeah. So been doing the Good Friday appeal for a couple of years now as an ambassador, and really privileged to be able to be an ambassador for the appeal. We've had, Hester alluded to before, with personal connection with my family. So my cousin Grace, she had leukemia twice, has Down syndrome as well. So what she's been through and what her family have been through, but by the extension of that, the amazing work that the Royal Children's Hospital have done for Grace and her family is unbelievable. And we really, with our own kids now, you just think about how amazing it is that we have a state-of-the-art children's hospital in our state,
100%.
and what we
So
would
lucky.
do, what we would do without that.
There's meerkats in there.
Yeah, there's an aquarium,
Yeah, ahoyts.
cinema. Yeah.
What, are you
It's
like
incredible.
real life meerkats?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, from Melbourne Zoo.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, and also
I've got it
incredible work and state of the like genuine.
And meerkats.
I don't think I've seen the meerkats.
Yeah.
Maybe during our hospital tours this year, I'll
You
have
can
to say,
ask to
can
see
you
the
just
meerkats?"
please guide me to the meerkat?
Yeah.
But yeah, in all seriousness, the hospital is unbelievable. The people that work there are unbelievable, and yeah, the work the appeal does. And I think the great thing is that people really feel a sense of community when the Good Friday appeal comes around,
Yeah.
and it's got the telethon day, and everyone tunes into it. It's one of those things that really brings us together as a community, and there aren't that many causes that can say they can do that, I don't think. But that's what it does. It makes everyone feel that community, that sense of community, but also the funds raised really do go to important causes, and they're able to get our kids the help that they need.
Yep.
Some kids that are in the most dire of situations. So it's amazing that we can be involved in that.
Great, awesome. Well, yes, that's coming up soon. So support Ben and the Good Friday appeal. This has been one of my favourite chats, 100%, easily. I had no expectations of what I thought we might talk about.
I feel like we took it off the rails a little bit.
Yeah, I'm so
You
sorry.
are
I apologize.
in a positive way. You are a force as a couple. Like a very, very, very impressive couple. Marnie,
What's the best vegan food in Melbourne?
Oh, that's a good question. We're actually going to have a brunch date after this,
Oh,
and I
cool.
think we were thinking of heading to Smith and Deli.
Oh, yeah.
So
Classic.
that's
Smith and
always
Deli.
a
Smith
hit.
and Daughters have always been amongst our favourites.
Yeah.
What's the best thing you get at Smith and Deli?
Oh,
They
I
kinda
always,
change it up,
They
don't they?
do, but I always love the tofu. It's called the Wiggum, I think. It's like a maple bacon tofu
Yeah.
sandwich.
this
Yeah.
is the deli versus the restaurant, yeah.
Yeah, or the restaurant slaps too.
Yeah. They're queso. They got like a queso dip situation.
We make that all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's in the recipe book.
What's your how are you cheesing that up? Like, what's the core ingredient that's doing that?
Well, it's got vegan cheese in it.
Vegan cheese.
But I
right.
think, Shannon is an incredible chef, and so her tricks of the trade include the nutritional yeast,
That's
which
the yeast,
gives
isn't
the,
it?
the
It's the yeast.
cheesy flavour, and also a little bit of mustard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
great.
feel like we've got it down to an art form. That
Yeah, we do. That's one of our classics at home.
dip.
Oh, but
Yeah.
this
Whenever
so-
I do like vegan cheese, I just put a lot of turmeric so it looks like it's so yellow.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're making American cheese.
Yeah.
Cornish Arms here is good as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we love the Cornish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beast do a bit. Beast are
Really
good.
good.
Well, Ben is actually celiac as well.
You were, oh man.
So
Yeah.
that makes things trickier.
What's your favourite food, Ben?
Anything I can eat.
Hey, me too.
anything that covers it off. Oh, honestly, I'm probably one of the best people to be a vegan celiac, because I feel like I'm one of those like food is fuel people,
Yeah. He could eat the same
so-
meal over and over again.
Yeah.
which I regularly have to do. So
Do you think that will change post footy?
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think he's excited about worrying less about how much protein he's eating in every meal. And I'm excited about, like, maybe we could just do like a tomato pasta one day.
Hey, thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate it. That's the end. Anything else from you? Hi, Tom.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, thanks for coming in. Go D's this year.
Go days.
Go D's. Chat soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks for having us.